Hi everybody, happy Friday. I'm Julie. I'm a blogger at Julia's Coco and Coco. I'm actually just renaming my website this week. It's going to be Julie Measures. I'm a craft and DIY blogger, and I do a lot of fiber crafts. I'm a knitter and a crocheter. So if this is your first time tuning in, we're doing learn to knit and learn to crochet videos, alternating weeks. This week is a knit video. So today we've only done one knit video so far. We talked about casting on, which is how you get the yarn onto your needles. So we're starting pretty basic with our learn to knit videos. You only need a few supplies. You'll need knitting needles. We're using straight standard knitting needles. Good morning. I'm glad you guys are tuning in. We're doing knitting today. If you've watched before, we kind of alternate what fiber craft we're doing, but today's a knitting video. So I've got my knitting needles. These are a US size 8, which is printed on the end. Sizing for knitting needles. There are US sizes that are numerical. There's also, a lot of countries use like a millimeter measurement for needle size, but it'll say on it. Good morning, Jamie. We've talked about before, your yarn will kind of give you a starting point for what size knitting needle to use. I recommend, as we're learning, to use a medium or a worsted weight yarn. Sometimes it's also like there's a number, it's like a size 4. Somebody asked, does it matter if you're left-handed? For knitting, it doesn't, and actually the way that I knit, you might find easier. We'll talk about that in a second. So I've got some medium weight, worsted weight yarn. I also recommend a lighter color yarn when you're learning to knit. It's just a lot easier to see the stitches as we're starting. Good morning, everybody. Hi Jennifer. So a lighter color, medium weight yarn, and then straight knitting needles is what you'll need. For the project today, and you need scissors. Good morning, everybody. Somebody, I think I just missed it. Somebody has a 3-year-old and wants to learn to knit. So I taught myself how to knit, 10 plus years ago, when my kids were little, because I wanted, my favorite hobby before that had always been reading. I found it really hard to read with little kids running around, and I wanted a hobby I could do with my hands, and so I first learned to crochet, and then I learned how to knit. So I've got the yarn, I've got my knitting needles, and then for today, we are going to make this really cute coffee cup cozy with a little bow on it. I promise this is really easy. You need to know one stitch, the knit stitch. That's what we're doing today. This is all done with the same stitch, repeated. See, I'll slide this off. You can see it. So it's a little bow. 363s. Sorry guys, I'm missing some comments as they're scrolling. So knitting needles, and I also have a tapestry needle that I'll use to sew up my coffee cozy as we're going. And then I've got my yarn. So we're gonna go over, a couple weeks ago we talked about casting on, which is just how you get the yarn onto the needles to start. Thanks for sharing the video, guys. And there are dozens of ways to cast on. I showed 3 so far. If you haven't watched that video, obviously we have to put, the yarn on the needle to do our project today. So we'll go over one of those ways again, but you can also find the video with some other ways to cast on. So if you watched before, I always start by talking and saying hi, and then we have a little moment while I flip the camera around so that you can see my hands, because it just is a lot easier for you to see what's going on that way, and then it's the right perspective. So you're looking at my hands and it's not, you know, reversed in the camera. So just a second, we're going to flip the camera. And you get a nice view of my ceiling while we... Okay. So, here we go. Let me reach over here and grab my yarn and the knitting needles and all my stuff. Okay, so we want to start by putting the yarn onto the knitting needles. So if you're just tuning in, this is a medium weight yarn. You're going to see it's a lighter colored yarn, no embellishments or anything. And then I've got size 8 knitting needles. Okay, so we're going to cast on and then we'll get going. Alright, so I'm going to do a slip stitch to start. If you've watched any of the videos, this is kind of how we start all of our projects. So I've got it like this. The part of the yarn that's connected to my ball is called the working yarn. This piece over here is the tail. So I've got this. I flip it. The short piece is on top. The working yarn is underneath. Okay? Pull this through, just like that, and I'll make my slip knot. And it's a slip knot because it slips. Alright. So I put that on, and I'm just going to do a wrap cast on today. So essentially I've got yarn running here, I've got my thumb, I'm kind of twisting it and putting it on the needle and then pulling it down a little bit. So it's hooked over my thumb, I'm turning it, making a loop, putting it on the needle and pulling it down. Okay? So the loops on our needle are how many stitches we have. So right now we have 3. 1, 2, 3. For the cozy, I'm going to cast on 12 stitches. So I've got 3 here. So we want to make sure we're not casting on with the tail yarn. It's got to be over here. I'm going to kind of tuck it under my fingers over here, and I'll keep casting on. So I've got 3. This will be 4. And I said there are dozens of ways to cast on. This actually is not my favorite way, but it's probably the simplest, and so it's great to start that. Is the slip knot supposed to be tied on the needle? It is pretty tight. That's this first stitch right here. I don't want it so tight that I can't knit into it, but this slip knot is my slip knot. This is what we started with, and then these are the additional stitches that I've cast on. So 4, 5, and this tightens it down, pulling on the working yarn as I add it on. 6. You do a lot of counting when you are knitting and crocheting. My sisters always joke that they're going to get me like a button that says, "Shh, I can't talk, I'm counting," because you have to count. Okay, so all my loops on the needles are the stitches we have on, so we can always go back and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I need 12. Hi Marianne. I'll put all these videos after I do them. They all go up on my YouTube channel, so you can always go back if you missed something, if you can't watch the whole thing, if you came in late. You can always go back and, you know, watch the whole thing. The one great thing about it being live is that you can ask me questions as we go along, but you can also email me at any time. You know, send me a photo of what you're working on. Say, hey, I'm stuck at this point. What do I do next? I'm happy to answer any questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We need 2 more. 11 and 12. Alright, so I have 12 stitches on my needle. Now, like I said, don't pull these so tight that you can't get, that we won't be able to knit on with them. Another tip may be, my YouTube channel is Coco and Coco, and I'll leave a link when I'm done here. And you can also, there's a link in the description for the video for my website, and you can get to my YouTube channel through there too. Yes. Oh, making hats to donate to the local NICU. So I have this set of twins that spent 2 weeks in the NICU, so that I love donating and doing things for that. All right. Add new colors. If you want to email me that, Heather, about adding new colors, we're doing a little more simplistic today. We're just going to talk about the knit stitch. All right, so I have everything cast on. If you find that when you're casting on they're too tight and you can't get a needle through it when we start knitting in just a second, you can always use like a larger needle. So this is a size 8. So maybe you cast on onto a 10, just so those loops will be bigger, and then kind of transition it to a smaller needle. There's always options. All right. There are 2, I would say, main ways to knit, and it depends on where you hold the yarn. Linda, the easiest is probably just to go up into the description of this video and click over to my website, and then there'll be a link to my YouTube channel there. Or you can message me and I'll send you the direct link. All right. So there are 2 ways to kind of hold your knitting needles. One is called the English method, and that's where you hold my working yarn right here. That's where you hold the working yarn in your right hand, and you, make sure that my needle's right here. You do all the work with your right hand. So like, and I'm going to delve into this stitch in a minute. This is really just how we're holding the yarn. So you would hold it, all right, I like to run the yarn through my hand like that. That gives me some control. I can pull my fingers together, I can loosen them, and then let the yarn slide. And okay, Linda, in the comment under this video, I'll send you a message and get what you're doing. All right, so you can hold the working yarn through your right hand like this. And then this hand is what moves to make the stitches. Okay. That's the English method, when you hold the working yarn in your right hand. When you hold it in your left hand over here, and you knit by moving it, that's called continental knitting. I'm not going to say your name right. Neha? Sorry. We're making this little knit coffee cozy today. So if you're just tuning in, I'll leave that right there. This is what we're making today. If you hold the working yarn in your left hand, it's called the continental style of knitting, and that's actually how I knit. If you've seen people knit before, they probably do it the other way. I learned how to crochet first, and for that you hold the yarn in your left hand, and to me that was just way more comfortable, and I was demonstrated both ways, and this way worked for me. So that's how I'm going to show you how to do it. I might try another video with it in my other hand, but today we're just going to do it in my left hand because that's how I do it naturally. And I might need some practice trying to demonstrate it with the other way. So, but there's some options. Okay, either way, you have your stitches that need to be knit into on the left needle. So what you want to work is always on the left side. The stitches, as you work them, then move to the right needle. Regardless of how you hold your yarn, that's what we're doing. So I've got my yarn over here. Now, so here's all my different loops, right? These are all the stitches. All right, so I've got my right needle. I want to insert it into this loop. So I have both needles are through this loop. Kind of twist it all the way so you can see 2 needles. The right needle is underneath, the left needle is on top. I'm going to use the right needle to kind of get this yarn, and I'm also going to guide it with my finger a little bit, and I'm pulling it through. Right? That is a knit stitch right there. So insert the needle. You kind of, I've got the yarn going over the tip, and then I'm pulling it through. Karen, so all we've done so far is cast on, which is just, sorry, I'm looking at the camera instead of looking at my hands is throwing my perception off just a little bit. All right. So all we've done so far is cast on, and we're just doing the knit stitch. And you can find the cast on video on my YouTube channel, or when this is done, you can go back and watch it. All right, so this is knitting. All right, so the stitches that I've worked are here. Stitches that I still need to work are over here. So I'm inserting, so there's that loop. You can kind of see, that's what I was talking about. It needs to be loose enough to, you know, you have this other needle be able to go in. So, okay. So I'm inserting the needle like that. I think I'm, okay, inserting the needle, and then I'm pulling it through. And that's pretty much it. So let's just keep going so we can, sometimes repetition is good, right? Pulling it through. Inserting the needle. So the left needle's in front. You can see my needle's all scratched up. It's been well used. The right needle's in back. The yarn's on top. And I'm pulling it through. Alright, and then we can count. And we can see how many stitches we've done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we should have 7 over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we just want to go all the way across. And there are a million different kinds of knitting needles. These are kind of like aluminum metal knitting needles. They have wood needles that are really great if you're a beginner. They're a little more grabby. The yarn doesn't slide around as much. So they're a perfect way to start. There's plastic. There's all kinds of knitting needles. So here we go. So I'm inserting, grabbing that yarn, and pulling it through. Inserting, grabbing it, pulling it through. And if you missed how I'm holding the yarn, I've just got to run through my fingers like that, and then down to the ball down there. Alright, so inserting. These are a size 8 knitting needles. And then I'm using a medium weight yarn. It's also can be called worsted weight, Aran weight, Afghan weight. Sometimes in knitting we have a lot of names for the same thing. Okay, sorry. So we knit all the way across. This is what it looks like. So we've moved all of the stitches to the right needle. Then to keep going, you flip it around. It becomes the left needle, and you keep going. So let's do another. Each time you go across is called a row. So we've done one row, so we can keep going. We'll do a couple more. I might go a little bit faster. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure my hands are in the video here. I have knit fairly continuously for the last 10 years. There have been months where I've put it down and come back to it, but it is definitely kind of a muscle memory once you do it. Once your hands figure out how to do it, it's pretty easy to keep doing. I will say at first, I mean, you got a lot of things going on right now. You've got yarn running through your fingers, you're working both hands. It can feel a little bit overwhelming. Your hands can feel a little bit overwhelmed and tired. So definitely take it slow and just practice. And the great thing about this cozy right here is really it's it. There are pretty much two main stitches in knitting, the knit stitch and the purl stitch. This is the knit stitch. And this is all you're doing for this whole cozy. You're just knitting every stitch. So we cast on 12 stitches, and then we're going to knit for 9 inches. So I'm not going to do this here with you for 9 inches because that would be kind of boring for you just to watch me do this over and over. We're going to do a few more. Alright, so as I said, this is called, I'm doing the continental style knitting because I've got the yarn over here on my left hand as opposed to my right hand. And you can kind of see these ridges right here starting to form. When you knit every stitch like this in every row, it's called garter stitch. And you get this ribbed kind of look. I know this is, oh, you know what, I have another one. This is the same yarn I'm working right now. So this is knit stitch, or this is garter stitch, where we're stitching every stitch in every row. And that's how it looks like. So let's do a few more. Oh, getting tangled up. Alright, so the left needle's on top, right needle goes in, yarn comes through. Needle goes in, and I pull it through. Right needle goes in, pull it through. Just like that. I'll do a couple slow again. So in, yarn, and I'm bringing that yarn through the stitch that's on that left needle. So I'm sticking the needle in, grabbing the yarn, and I'm grabbing it with that right needle and guiding it through that stitch. So in, and I'm guiding it through, and then every time I get to the end, I just flip it, and you can keep going. And that's a knit stitch. So, to you guys, before we flip over, well, not flip over, before we go into the next step of making our cozy, do you guys have any questions about this particular stitch? Do you want to see it again? Do you need to see it slower? I might get brave here in a second and see if I can demo holding the yarn the other way. I said that muscle memory. This is how I knit, so I'm going to look really awkward trying to do it the other way. Sorry, this is getting blurry as my hands are getting too close to the, here, I'm gonna try. I'm warning you that this is not how I knit. So, you can make a scarf just doing this. Obviously I would make it wider than the 12 that we cast on. Probably at least double that, 24, 30. But yes, you can totally make a scarf doing just this. And make a really cute garter stitch scarf. Alright, so just for, we will, yes, so for blankets, somebody asked about blankets. Obviously, okay, this is the length of my knitting needle, so I can't really make anything wider than that. But there are other kinds of knitting needles called cable knitting needles, and we will get into this, that look like 2 knitting needles with a cable that connects them, and that's how you would make blankets, and I will totally demonstrate that in the future. So we're starting just kind of with the stitches. Oh, I was going to try to demo how to do this in my right hand. Okay, there's no laughing. So you would, I mean, it's very similar. I'm going to put my needle through. I still have the left needle on top, right needle's underneath. But then you take your right hand and you wrap this and then bring it through. So you stick the needle in, you wrap. This is also called throwing, this way of knitting. People refer to it as throwing because you're sort of throwing the yarn around. And I look a little awkward doing this, I know, but this is another way. If you don't want to hold the yarn in your left hand, this is the English method, or the throwing method. But you can see, I mean, you're still doing the same. The right goes underneath, the yarn is being brought through the loop to still make your knit stitch. But there are a couple different ways to do this. And we'll get to the end of this row with our English style of knitting. Hi Sammy. So to put the yarn on the needle, it's called casting on. And if you head over to my YouTube channel, I have 3 different ways I'll share to do that. You can also, once we're done here, you can go back and rewatch this. And I talk about casting on and demo one way to do that as well. So how you get the yarn on the needle is called casting on, and we did that a couple weeks ago. So today we're primarily doing this knit stitch. That's how it looks. That's our garter stitch. And it looks the same on the front and the back, which is one of the advantages of this knitting every stitch. So as you can see close up on this one, there's really no front or back with the garter stitch. So it is great if you want to do a scarf or something like that. So they're, you know, kind of folded over, how that looks. Okay, so this is my piece. It's the same width as this one that I showed you. It's 12 stitches that I cast on, and then I knit in garter stitch, knit every stitch, every row, and this is about 9 inches. To make my coffee cozy, I'm using a tapestry needle, a blunt tapestry needle, and then all you really want to do is just stitch up the ends. So I'm just going to kind of put this together, and I just, this isn't I'm going to do this a little bit faster than my finished one, but basically you just want to, you know, stitch this together. Sorry guys, I think I lost you for a second. I'm just stitching this on here. Just so that this is connected. And so when you, oh, that's what I wanted to show you. Sorry, hold on. Take a step back. Come back to that in a second. All right. It'd be good if I showed you how to, like, take this off the needle, huh? Okay. Binding off is a, how you finish your project. So, it's kind of like continuing to knit. So, I would knit a stitch, knit another stitch. So we're binding off. Sorry guys, I got ahead of myself. When I have 2 stitches on my right needle, I'm going to insert my hook into the first one and bring it over the second one. Now I have 1 stitch on my right needle, and I'm going to knit another one over here on the left needle, so that once again I have 2 stitches on the right needle. Again, I'm going to insert my hook or my needle and pull it over. And this is creating the top edge of my finished knitting. So whatever stitch you use over here, these are all knit stitches. So I'm binding off in knit stitch, would be the way that we would describe that. So I'm just knitting, and then this is the binding off. The first loop gets pulled over the second loop. And then I come back over here. So Lynette, so we talked about there's 2 different ways to hold the yarn. There is the English style of knitting where I'm holding the working yarn in my right hand, or continental style where I hold the yarn in my left hand. And that's the way that I am actually right-handed, but for me it was more comfortable to do continental style knitting and hold it over here. If right or left-handed, you can do either way, whatever's more comfortable for you. So bring the first stitch over the second one. So I knit the stitch and then I bind off. And then I knit the stitch and I bind off. And for people who have been knitting a long time, it can look, most people I would say in the US knit English style with the yarn over here. I remember the first time I went to a knitting group and they all looked at me like I was crazy because I was knitting differently. That's okay, it's comfortable for me. So I knit a stitch and then I bind it off. And I knit and bind off. And I've got one more. So I knit this last stitch. And then, oh, if I could grab the right thing, I bind it off. Now I'm left with one stitch hanging up here. And the complete video will be on my YouTube channel when we're done, or you can watch the replay here, so you can catch up any part that you missed. So I cut a piece from the tail. To sew this up, leave a pretty longer than I just left, tail, so that you can stitch that up. And then you can just pull this through that loop and knot it off. There we go, a little finished garter stitch piece. Okay, so back over, this is my full length one that we hastily stitched together to make it, you know, my cozy. Now, what do I do with these guys? So I use a tapestry needle, and a lot of patterns and things will call it weaving it in. So basically you're just kind of running this one, because we're just doing a cozy here, it's not going to be as pretty, but basically I'm just kind of running the yarn through some stitches with the needle. And then you would snip off any extra, and that's kind of called weaving it in. So then I do the other side, and that would give me my little finished cozy. Now, it needs a bow. Okay. This is another garter stitch piece I made, and it is, oh, people are still asking about, I'm actually right-handed, so there are two, I talked about there's two different styles of knitting. If you hold the yarn in your right hand, it's called English method or throwing. If you hold it in your left hand, it's called continental method. And I'm right-handed, but I like doing it continental. You can do it either way. They'll both work. It'll give you the same results. So this is my bow, and it is, I cast on 6 stitches, so it was worked this way. I cast on 6 stitches. I knit for 18 rows, and I've got this little rectangle piece. I'm going to make the bow, you just pinch the middle, and I'm going to actually, because, so one of the ends I already kind of wove in, but I'm just going to run this one to the middle. And then I can wrap. And you'll end up with this little garter stitch bow. So that's it. I'm going to really just knit that little piece of garter stitch, wrap the yarn around it, and you've got a cute little bow. And, I mean, you could put this on a headband, clip it in your little girl's hair. I do not have a little girl, but, I mean, these are totally easy to make and really cute. I'm attaching mine to my cozy, my knit cozy. And I'm just gonna use my tapestry needle to just kind of tack it on there. Really nothing elaborate. Just, and I'm not worried about how this stitching looks on the inside because nobody's gonna see it. So I'm just tacking this on here. Oh, and I lost my yarn and my needle. Alright, so my bow's on there. Then I'm just gonna knot the inside. And you could weave that little strip in too. But that's it. Then you can slip your cozy onto your cup. Keep your hands nice and coat, you know, keep yourself from burning yourself on your drink. And that's it. That is your cute little garter stitch all knit cozy. Just like that. So this is kind of a sparkly green that I thought would be fun. But these don't take very long to make. If you're looking to give a handmade gift, it's a fun one to do, and it's a great way just to practice your knit stitch. I will leave some links up at the top or in the comments. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. I'm going to flip the camera around again. And you get to see my ceiling again. Hi! Okay. So, thanks for tuning in. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to message me through Facebook, how do I make the bows rounded? That's just how they, after I wrapped the yarn around the center, I mean, they're not really, they're kind of squared from knitting that. They do curl in a little bit, kind of, but just wrap the yarn around the center there. So we made these cute little cozies today. If you have any questions, feel free, message me. You can message me on Facebook, you can email me, find me on Twitter, Instagram, all the places on there. And we'll be back. We're alternating knit videos and crochet videos, so crochet will be up next, and then we'll be back for more knitting, and we'll add in a new stitch next time. So this was the knit stitch, and next time we'll probably talk about the purl stitch, but let me know if you have any questions before then, and we'll get you all knitting with me. So thanks so much for tuning in today, and hanging out with me this morning, and we'll see you again next Friday. Okay, have a great weekend. Bye.